nobody likes green text message bubbles. Welcome back to Filling You In. I'm Coco, and with me is my co-host Subash, and today we've got a great episode for you. Thank you all for the support again, for listening, tuning in, writing nice reviews, and rating our podcast 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And with that, let's get into the episode. So today we're going to be discussing Apple versus Samsung. And it's a topic that we're both pretty versed in. Ever since I was young, I'd wake up early to watch the keynotes, and I get super hyped for them. I know you have some sort of a same experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really more to say, dude. I'm an Apple fanboy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm not, dude. I think ever since like the iPhone 5C and the 5S released, dude, I was up watching the keynotes. Like seriously, I definitely enjoy watching them. It's a pretty cool moment. You wake up, hear about some dope new products that have released. They did some pretty interesting stuff during quarantine, during COVID with the Apple events, but. Yeah,
I got really into it when I first saw the video of the Apple Watch. It was like this 10-minute video narrated by Johnny Ivan. I was just really hyped to potentially being able to watch movies during class on my watch. But yeah, that's when I got really into Apple and things like that. And like you, I really haven't missed a keynote ever since. Yeah, and with that being said, let's just get into some of the background information on the two companies we're going to be focusing on today, which is Apple and Samsung. So Apple, as we all know, it had its two main founders, which is Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. But you may not know that it actually had a third founder, and that guy's name is Ronald Wayne. And you're probably wondering what happened to him. Well, he sold his share back to Steve Jobs and Wozniak. I think it was a couple weeks after he actually invested in the company, just for the reasons that he didn't think that they were going to go super far and it was too much of a financial risk for him. So he sold back his stock to them. And, ever since then, Apple has revolutionized the personalized technology industry from the iPhone to the iPad, iMac, MacBook, Apple Watch. And, I could really go on. But yeah, I mean, they've really had a huge impact on the 21st century. And it's just been really cool to watch as they continue to have that effect on us.
Yeah, and then on the other side, there's Samsung. Samsung has been around since 1938. It is not owned by Microsoft. However, they have a partnership. Nothing really more to it. They make phones, tablets. It's pretty much the same things that Apple makes, except they kind of have their whole home appliance section. They definitely make a lot more products, but we're gonna be definitely talking more into like phones and tablets and watches today. Who makes the better phone, Apple or Samsung?
You know, I would say that on hardware wise, it's Samsung, and it's not even close. Like we've already established, we're both big Apple fans. I don't think we can just sit here and just say that Apple has a better hardware because it's not true. I mean, Samsung screens are better, their cameras are better, the features are better. Some of the features that are on the Samsung, Apple will have in 5 years, like they're just behind. And that's interesting to see since Apple had a huge head start. Nobody was doing smartphones like Apple did when they released iPhone 1. The reason that Apple still dominates is mainly because of its ecosystem and UI. And so for those of you out there who is like, what's UI and what's ecosystem? UI is user interface. So that's just like how it looks and works and things like that. And the ecosystem is like a community, which is pretty much like all the different products and how they work together and things like that. And Apple's ecosystem and UI is just so fluid. It's familiar and things like that. And it's dominant. And I think that's why they're able to still sell as many phones as they have, even though their phones aren't as good. What do you think?
I agree 100% on your entire take with phones and stuff. However, the one thing that Samsung does not do better, really the only thing they do better than Apple when it comes down to technology is their phones. But Apple has so many other products on their product line. They definitely fall behind when it comes to tablets and wearables. Nobody's stopping Apple in that area of the tech industry. Apple Watch is on so many wrists and iPads are literally everywhere. I can't think of the last time I saw someone wearing a Galaxy Watch, if I've ever even seen somebody. Um, and I mean, it's just that's where Apple is better. Again, their ecosystem, everything works together. it's just a big web of products, and all of them talk to each other. And that's why I think Apple Watch and iPad are amazing products.
And it's not just Samsung with its phones that dominate Apple. You look at companies like Google that are rolling out things like Google Pixel. And yes, I mean, it looks kind of it kind of looks different, but I mean, the Google Pixel phones are pretty outstanding. I mean, the camera quality is pretty close. The UI, like Samsung, is not as good because I think they both run Android or some form of software like that. That's not Apple. But yeah, the Google phone is good and it's a lot cheaper and it's affordable. But both phones have sort of a stigma around that, and that's really thanks to Apple's ecosystem, branding, and UI. And I think we should get right into that.
Yeah, pre-pandemic when iPhones released, the night before there'd be lines outside of Apple stores. I mean, literal mile long lines. If you haven't seen the ones over in New York or in LA, I mean, they're insanely long. And that just shows how much of a cult following Apple has. People are in love with Apple's products. They'll wait in line to get them before everyone else can. When it comes to non-iOS phones talking to your iPhone, I mean, there's definitely like iPhone stigma for sure. Like the green text bubble hate. Like if you're that one kid in the group chat who's making everybody have a green bubble, like you know what I mean? Like you're definitely the one getting booted out of the group chat. Just stuff like that. You know, things don't really work super seamlessly, but there's other cool features that are built into iOS as well that Samsung does not have.
I think that the green text bubble was absolutely hilarious. I mean, you know, there was research done that showed that that color, like people weren't a fan of it, and for Apple to just go and change the Android and its competitors' iMessage bubbles to that color, I think it was super smart play because it's super effective. In fact, I know a lot of people that own non-Apple phones that are like, gosh, man, I really need to switch off of this because I'm actually getting
Yeah.
so much hate for having green text message bubbles. And I think I might have to switch to an iPhone. And that's thanks to Apple's part. I mean, they do a great job with their branding. Pretty much every ad they put out is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Cinematography,
their ads
editing,
are
and
so
everything.
cool. Their
Yeah.
ads are so cool.
And just like the cult following they have behind them, it's super hilarious to see how they've been able to build it up and to see where it is today. Everything just works. For you want to connect to the TV, there's AirPlay. You want to send pictures or something like that, there's AirDrop. iMessages and things like that. I mean, it's just super, super fluid, familiar. It's completely fantastic. And I don't think any company competes with that right now. I don't think there is any company that competes with that right now.
Nah, no one's playing the ecosystem game like Apple is.
Yeah, I mean, the person behind a lot of Apple's stuff was Steve Jobs. And a big question is, what would happen to Apple if he was still alive today? What do you think?
I mean, I could totally answer that. First thing, the last three iPhone releases have been so bad, like compared to each other. Like literally after the iPhone 10, I think the most revolutionary thing that's happened is probably the three cameras. Nothing else has happened. Versus if you look back when Steve Jobs was running the company, or maybe closer to that to when he had just passed, dude, every single iPhone update was like massive. Like one of my one of my favorite ones, most notably, would be the step from the iPhone 5 to the iPhone 6. The screen was bigger. I mean, everyone was freaking out about it when it released. Camera was better. It was just a much bigger phone. I remember I thought it was so cool at the time, and I mean, still, dude, it was so cool. Now we look at iPhone 6s, we're like, what? Back then, I mean, it was the coolest thing in the world. Yeah, I think if Steve Jobs was still running the company, I mean, the innovation between iPhone to iPhone would be much greater. They wouldn't be just literally adding new colors and adding a camera every release and you know adding new finishes and stuff. It's all either internal or it's like really like not super insane like hardware changes. Another thing I think would be different. Apple Pencil may not have been a thing. Steve Jobs vocally talked about how he did totally disliked styluses. The innovation between iPhone to iPhone would be much bigger, and there'd be a lot more changes.
Yeah, I think it has a big deal to do with his replacement as CEO, which is Tim Cook. I think Tim Cook, from a business standpoint, has done an excellent job growing the company. But I mean, he implemented all these things that made it not what it once was. such as changing the iPhone refresh from 2 years to 3 years. So pretty much what that means is before, there'd be iPhone like 5, right? And then next year it'd be iPhone 5S, and then next year it'd be iPhone 6. And then once there was iPhone 5S, after that, there are huge features that are added on. But nowadays, you go from iPhone like X to iPhone XS, and what is new? Like you got a new gold color. I don't think people really care about that. I mean, maybe some people who are in fashion do, but realistically, like you could have given us a third camera then. Like if Steve Jobs was alive now, I think that a whole bunch of products would be completely different. Number one, I think that the Apple Watch would be round by now. There have been leaks, there have been rumors and leaks and for stuff like that for years. And I think it would have been implemented within, 3 years of Apple Watch being released. So like Apple Watch 3, I think it'd be a round design. I think that Apple probably would have worked on their streaming services and things like that because Steve Jobs was always at the forefront of new platforms and things like that. You look at iTunes and things like that. And I mean, he created that. That was one of the biggest things. And I think he would have recognized the potential in the streaming market and he would have hopped right on that. And so I think that would be another space where Apple would be dominant. I think Apple would be less scared of adding new features to their phones. I mean, other companies do it. You look at Samsung. I remember one year, like their phones were like exploding or something.
They had batteries in their phones,
Yeah.
lithium ion batteries that had yeah, that they're having some issues with them, and they were exploding. Yeah.
But I mean, now you see them and they're implementing all these new features, whereas Apple is waiting. It's like waiting 5 years for new features to be 100% safe, and then they're implementing it. And while they do get a bunch of sales from that, I mean, Steve Jobs would have immediately added it on, if not created those new features and things like that. I mean, why are we still using lightning cables to charge our iPhones and things like that? I think he would have switched on to something revolutionary. It would have been a lot different. And I think that the company Apple would be way different if Steve Jobs were alive today. Another big what if is what would happen if Bill Gates didn't bail Apple out when they were broke? So, providing some context to Apple being broke, in August 1997, Apple was pretty much bankrupt. They had just brought Steve Jobs back, and Bill Gates, he saw Apple was going down. And you could say that he did this for many reasons, but he invested 150 million into Apple, which really allowed them to continue to develop products and become the company they are today, which is, I think, the biggest company in the world. I think it's around 2.1 trillion they're worth. I think it's around 2.1 trillion is Apple's worth. What are your thoughts?
Bill Gates definitely earlier on had a big impact on Apple, but I think, yeah, if Bill Gates didn't bail out Apple and they were broke, I don't personally, I don't even think they would be maybe even running, to be honest. They were in a really, weird position when that happened.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of a simple question because like what would happen if he didn't get him out of bankruptcy? I mean, it's pretty simple. They would have gone bankrupt. But I mean, like I guess it's would Steve Jobs have created something else because he had just come from Pixar and his company Next and things like that? Like what would that company be and would it be the same size as Apple is today? That's just, an interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer with when it comes to the size, I mean, you never know, but Steve Jobs would have had to restart everything and basically start from the ground up. So, would have been a step back, but we never know because that never happened. What can they add to iPhone? I mean, if I was asked this question a while back, I would have never thought what they're doing now would be what they would add in the future. Especially when the iPhone 10 launched, like I had no idea where Apple was going to go with that. But what do you think? What do you think is with the future of iPhone?
I think that the problem is that they have all these leaks that come out and it gets everybody hyped for new features that we think are going to be in the new iPhone and then when it gets released it's really not and you have to wait like 5 years for that feature you really wanted to come out 5 years ago. Kind of a letdown. Personally I would like to see a iPhone with, 2-day battery. That'd be super nice. Things like that. Increased screen quality and camera quality. Samsung has a 100x zoom on one of their phones. Get that on the iPhone ASAP. Maybe make it 200x just for the heck of it. Another thing I think they could add is changing the lightning. I mean, I like lightning cables and all, but I mean, it's slow. It's slower than things that are out there, and there are definitely way better alternatives to it. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like you said, hey, Samsung has a 100 times zoom lens. Psych. Nope. You know what? For the fun of it, let's just make it 200 times. I mean, you got to do it bigger and better. I think that's the only way you can really go with it. Uh, whatever Apple does, they just have to one up what Samsung is doing and give people a reason to buy their phone, not just because of the ecosystem, not just because of the Apple logo, but because it's a genuinely great phone and has better features than the competition.
Yeah, I think user interface wise and ecosystem wise, they don't really have to worry. They just got to continue what they're doing, which is make great products that work well together, and they'll be fine. But that also begs the question: is if they don't make these changes, is Apple going to be alive in 20 years? Will it die? What are your thoughts?
Um, it's unpredictable. It's hard to say. Right now, Apple's at a really interesting point. Whatever they do within the next 2 to 3 years, I think is just going to be what's going to decide Apple's future. They really have to start making some really serious moves. Vroom vroom talks about Apple Car coming. Do I think that's going to save Apple, or not? Maybe not save them, but do I think that's going to maybe bring back some of the hype? Maybe. To be honest, it's kind of a big step. But I don't think Apple will die if they get back to changing the industry and doing things that no one else is doing, and not just releasing slight changes, and instead doing things that aren't out yet, doing things that Samsung isn't doing, things that Google isn't doing. Uh, and we'll see from there. But right now, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell.
I think they're not going to die mostly because Tim Cook has done a great job, like I said before, making sure that Apple continues to grow. As you can tell, Apple's worth has only gone up since Steve Jobs' death. Yeah, so do I think Apple's going to die? I don't think so. Tim Cook has done a great job making sure that the business only has gone up since Tim Cook's death. They're number one in the world in size, but I think that by 2050, Google will be the biggest technology and overall company in the world. I mean, you see what they're doing now. Google is probably the biggest search engine that is used around the world. And, they're coming out with technology that is really just changing the game. And I think that by 2050, they will be the biggest tech company in the world.
And yeah, that's a wrap on today's episode. If you guys are listening over on YouTube, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We appreciate every subscriber. It really does mean a lot. And hey, comment down below your favorite part of today's episode. If you guys are over on Apple Podcasts, leave a review, 5 stars, please, and write something nice.
Once again, thanks for letting us fill you in, and we will see you in the next episode.